So, I'd like to invite, I believe Christiane Texter will be doing the reporting from Breakout Group A. Are you using a presentation? Do we have it uploaded?
No, but we can switch. Can't we put it just as we did before? No. Table?
So anyone else who wants to use a PowerPoint presentation, please give a memory stick with that presentation to Ole Christian, or give it to Ole Christian.
I think I can just start without. So in the group, we have been discussing improving the readability, clarity, and policy relevance of IPCC reports, and we came up with, I think, 10 draft recommendations, which I'm going to summarize here. And the first is on the scoping process. So the IPCC has, in its rules of procedures, it says that we should have a scoping meeting, and that it's about, and that the nomination process should be inclusive. And that's about it. So there's a lot of potential to increase transparency here. So what we said is, I'm doing a little bit more than I should because the presentation is not yet up. To make the reports more usable for the readers, policy relevant, which is our task, we said that it would be good to identify the audience and the stakeholders, and they should provide input to what should go into the reports. And to do that, a methodology should be developed, how to get their report and how to do that. And then it should involve communication specialists from the beginning, and the scoping should be an iterative process between experts of all kinds. Block A, the second from top. So that's what I said. Identify the audience and stakeholders, and develop a methodology how to do that. Involve communication specialists from the start, and do it in an iterative process, the scoping. The length of the report, it should be comprehensive as it was before, but the language should be as elegant and as tight as possible. And the priority should be given to policy relevant questions. The structure, explore possibilities for a report in a multi-layer interactive form to make it more usable for different users. So we said that there is already the SPM, the technical summary, the executive summaries, the underlined chapters, the FAQ. And so this is already multi-layered, but it could be even better. And then enhance the cross-cutting working group cooperation throughout the process, including starting from the scoping and drafting, and identify ways how to do that. And then we said that it would be very good to rename the working groups in a more accessible way. So not number 1, 2, and 3, nor the technical terms they are now named with. Then we said that there is an incremental nature of the assessments. There is a body of knowledge which exists, and then the assessments builds on top of this. So how to do that? Because many users don't know what has been in the previous reports. So we said that the assessment should remain incremental, and that there should be some reference to the old reports, but that the SPM should be written, if I'm not mistaken, it should say the SPM should be written in a self-contained way. Yes?
No, this was the whole thing. No.
The whole thing?
The whole thing.
I think we went back and forth.
No, the whole thing. Well, the whole thing.
I think
The whole thing.
whole thing. But then it's contradictory, to be honest, if it's I got it. The assessment work, so people should look at the body of research and then see what comes on top, and this should go. So the uncertainties. We had a lot of discussion about uncertainties here, and we couldn't resolve it, but we said that there should be more work going into it, and IPCC should arrange a workshop including scientists, communication and linguistic experts to address the expression of uncertainty in the AR6. And that could draw on the experience with the national assessment of the US. And then the writing process should include specialists from the beginning, and communication skills should be one of the factors involved in the nomination and the selection of authors, so that in addition to the scientific experience, there should also be authors who are good communicators. And then appropriate specialists from a range of communication disciplines would be involved at all stages. And we could draw upon experiences from other organizations' reports. And there should be training of the authors in writing and communicating, including guidelines that should be developed so that they would know how to use the language, the length of sentences, not to use jargon, these kinds of things. Language, again, provide training of authors and provide guidance papers. The report should be written in an elegant way. This is not realistic throughout the report because of the many hundreds of pages, but priorities need to be set. So we should focus on the SPM, FAQ, and executive summaries. Graphics, we have a lot of recommendations there. So bring graphic designers and data visualists in early and clarify also what type of graphics to be used. So that could be very scientific graphics, infographics, animated graphics, different things for different audiences. And the approach to graphics should be based on findings from communication science, so that could also include the use of certain colors. Graphics and data underlying it should be archived for transparency and traceability, which is at the moment not all the time the case. Then there should be a horizon scan for opportunities arising as graphics and visualization techniques evolve. So we could imagine that in 10 years' time, we won't have reports which don't move. Everything would be animated, or we could just move through the reports. So we should keep that in mind when we go into the writing process. There should be author training also on the development of graphics, and graphics should be tested for intelligibility during the review. And then there should be graphics which are difficult, and some should, of course, there are always there. This is a scientific report, but there should also be simplified graphics for the SPM and for outreach, which can then really be used also in presentations later. And there was the idea of having multi-layered graphics also. The summary for policymakers, well, this is a summary for citizens, or both. So we said that we always have to keep in mind our end users when we structure and write the SPM. So there was a lot of discussion about the storyline, about not having the uncertainty information up front, but the important messages, things like that. And then that is what we said, bring the most important and relevant findings to the top. They have to be clear and accessible. The storyline has to be useful for users. And then we said who would be involved in this design of the SPM. And that is, of course, many people, and the review process would also be very useful, so that stakeholders could have the say. And then be as short as possible, but also as comprehensive as necessary, because it's only the SPM which undergoes the government approval. And then again, for the modern times, we said that it would be useful to consider an approval process needed for animated graphics. And then in the end, when we want to do that, that means an increase in resources probably. So we would recommend to governments to provide increased support to communication and outreach issues. And that was, I guess, what I understood from the group. Please.
Thank you very much. We'll open up for some questions and remarks. I have Leo, and I have Laura, and I have Lance.
Thank you, Christiane, and the whole group for this an excellent list of recommendations. I have one question about how would you think, what is your estimation if the panel would ever be able to approve in an SPM a multi-layered graphic with interactive options, so infographics. My gut feeling is, knowing them, that that would not fly, but maybe I'm too pessimistic.
Okay, should we take the comments first, and then you can respond in the summary? Sure, Jonathan.
Yeah, as Christian said, I'm going to ask the rapporteurs to send me the beautifully polished recommendations in a week's time, and then feel free to tweak them and fine-tune them in the light of the discussion that's happening now, if you think that's appropriate. Yeah.
Thank you. Laura.
When considering the graphics people and communicators, I would like to stress the need for different cultural perspectives, because not all colors are the same everywhere.
Lance?
I question whether it's a good idea to require authors to be good communicators. I think the most important thing is that they're good scientists and that they represent different geographies, genders, but some will be good communicators and some won't. I don't think that's a great criteria. Also question whether they need graphics training. That's another thing. That's why you have a graphics expert. There's so much that we're putting on them already in terms of training and knowledge, but I'm sure there's more context behind that. Thanks.
Would you like to respond? I think, yes, Richard?
Yeah, I think the co-chairs should.
So on your first point, the word require wasn't in there. It's one of the criteria that could be used in selection. But we knew it was quite a contentious thing, and as Deborah has mentioned, that in some quarters that could be perceived as being sort of discriminatory against the global south, which definitely wasn't our intention, but it could be politically contentious simply because of that. But nevertheless, I mean, you may be right.
Nice to have.
Yeah. In terms of the graphics training, we were not thinking of, giving all authors a training on how to do graphics, but just making sure that up front they realise that you can have good graphics and graphics that cannot be understood, so that they're aware, you don't have to have a graphic that has, 1,000 data points, because no one's going to understand it. That's really, it's the use of, not making them.
I misunderstood that because that's a really...
Thank you. Christiana, do you have other responses?
The multi-layer graphics, Leo wanted to know. I think that is not that we want to provide multi-layer graphics immediately in the SPM. It was rather the idea that these can be used then and for further down the line. Now there are these generic presentations. That was the product, you mean? Yes, and then for the future we said that if there is in modern times there are animated graphics, then we really need to consider how to do that. So the question you have addressed should be carefully thought about. We cannot now because we don't know really how it would be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's move on to Group B.